For this specific shed, you will need an area at least 213 cm by 130 cm. Check all parts against the parts list before beginning construction and identify each component. The components will all feature part numbers on them for easy identification. You may wish to remove all of the washers from their grids before you start. There is a plastic coating on the majority of the shed components to protect it during transport. This should be removed before construction as it can be tough to remove later. Using your instructions, refer to the parts needed for base installation and identify the required pieces. For this section you will also need the following tools: a posi drive screwdriver, tape measure, square and a spirit level. Lay out your rear base frame lengths and align the screw holes before securing together with 4 screws. Align one end of the rear frame to one of the side frame pieces at a right angle and secure with screws. Align the other end with the second side frame and secure as before. Place the front corner framing in position and secure at the corner with screws. Secure the front frame on the opposite corner with 2 screws. The door threshold should then be placed over the ends of the front base framing. Do not secure this yet though. At this point you want to make sure that your shed is in the correct position on your base, as well as making sure the pieces are square across the angles. Use a tape measure to check this. Once you are completely satisfied that the base is square, mark with a pencil through the holes in the frame onto the concrete below. Move the frame out to the side and drill down into the concrete at each marked point. Insert plugs into each hole. Secure the base down into the drilled holes with 16 screws positioned around the entire frame. Check that everything is still square and level before moving on to the walls. Using your instructions, refer to the parts needed for wall assembly and identify the required pieces. You will also need a pair of pliers. Over the front left corner, position the first 2 panels, overlapping the joints. Affix the panels to the base frame using screws and washers. Do not attach top bolts as roof components will share these holes later. To affix the panels together, thread a bolt through the front holes in the middle of the panel with a washer and secure with a nut on the other side. Use pliers to hold the nut steady. Repeat this for the opposite corner with the same panels. The rear corners require the same panel orientation and should be affixed in the same way as the front. With the 4 corners now installed, position the side framing over the top of each side panel as shown, making sure the lip of the frame is facing into the building. Affix each frame through the top of the side panel with screws and washers at each end. Place the top 2 rear framing pieces together, overlapping the screw holes. Secure the framing using screws. This can now slot into the shed, with the lip facing into the building. Place the top front framing end to end, and brace together using the C-shaped plate. Secure the plate using screws through the pre-drilled holes. Insert 2 door runners into each end of the framing as shown. These will serve as support for the shed doors. This framing can now slot into the shed, with the opening facing into the building. Secure the framing through the front panels with screws and washers. Once you have the top framing complete, align the central wall panels along the sides and secure them along the bottom edge, the middle and into the top framing with nuts and bolts. Make sure the edges of the panel are on the inside of the building. The remaining rear panels can now be attached in the same method as shown. Position the door framing to the left of the doorway, making sure the tabs are in the position shown. Attach the frame at the top and bottom with screws and washers, and to the middle of the panel with nuts and bolts. Repeat this for the right side of the doorway, again making sure that the framing is aligned as shown. Place the door threshold over the base frame, and secure with 2 screws at each end. Using your instructions, refer to the parts needed for roof frame assembly, and identify the required pieces. Begin by removing the top 2 screws from the front framing plate. Insert the top door crossbar over the bar at the top of the doorway, and secure with 2 screws at each end. Place the rectangular front panels onto the top of the door framing, and secure in place with 4 screws each into the framing below. Thread a bolt through the upper hole where the panels join, and secure with a nut. Once these are attached, position the triangular side panels on the side framing, overlapping the front panels as shown. Secure with 6 bolts down into the framing and secure with nuts. Join the sides to the front panels through the 2 holes, affix them with nuts, bolts and washers. Position an L bracket against the side of the triangular roof panel as shown, and secure with nuts and bolts. Repeat this for the other side. The 6 C-shaped brackets need to be positioned on the inside of the front panels as shown, and secured through the front with nuts, bolts and washers. Place the 2 roof support beams together as shown, and affix a large plate over the 2 as shown. This plate needs to be secured through to the other side with nuts and bolts. Position the small L plate in the position shown and secure into the roof beam with nuts and bolts too. You can now position each roof bar in between the side panels, aligning the bar with L brackets and securing with 2 bolts and nuts for each side. Use the central beam to bridge the gap between the support bar and the front of the shed, aligning it with the L bracket as shown and the lower holes of the front panels. Affix with 2 nuts and bolts at each end. Using your instructions, refer to the parts needed for roof panel assembly and identify the required pieces. Arrange the first roof panel over the front right side of the shed, making sure the panel is orientated to leave a slight overhang on the front edge. Affix the panel down through the top into the roof beam and side framing with screws and washers. Arrange the next panel so that it overlaps the first and secure in the same manner. Repeat this for the remaining panels, saving the smaller roof panel until last. Slide the front roof framing over the front of the roof panels. Use washers and screws through the top of the frame to secure them in place in the middle of the frame, leaving the end holes. Slip the rear framing onto the back edges of the shed, using washers and screws to secure them in the middle as well. Repeat this process for the side roof panel framing with a single screw in the middle. Align the corner caps over each corner of the shed and secure in place with a screw down through the top. Position the plastic vents within the gaps at the front of the shed. Secure these in place with a screw on either side. Using the small caps, go around the inside of your shed and cap off any bare screws. With the main body of your shed now complete, the next step is the doors. Using your instructions, refer to the parts needed for the door assembly and identify the required pieces. Attach the side framing to each side of the door panel, making sure the 8 holes are at the top of the panel and the framing points into the door. Arrange the diagonal framing bars, making sure the framing pieces overlap at the edge as shown, and secure the frame with a single screw. Then secure them with bolts, washers and a nut into the middle holes of the panel. Attach the framing bar to the top of the door and secure with screws at both ends, making sure the 8 holes line up evenly. Attach the bottom framing bar to the bottom of the door and secure this with screws at both ends too. The small plastic door catches need to be affixed to each side of the bottom framing of each door using a nut and bolt. Align the door handles on the doors and secure with bolts and nuts. Repeat this for the second door panel. Slide the base of the door into the groove in the threshold of the shed, and then push the top of the door into position. The holes in the top of each door need to line up with the previously inserted runners. The door holes are at varying heights to allow you to position the door for optimum movement. Use screws to secure the doors to the runners on each side, making sure they run smoothly and are square within the doorway. Use a standard household oil lubricant on the runners and wipe away any excess. Your metal shed is now complete. If you have purchased a metal shed foundation kit, please continue to watch. Before beginning your foundation kit, check all parts against the parts list and identify each component. Make sure the end tabs of each beam are straight using a pair of pliers. Start your kit by connecting 2 of the longer pieces at the end using the supplied screws to create a larger piece of framing. Slide the smaller bar at a right angle to the large bar and secure with screws into the outermost screw holes. Secure the other smaller bar in the same manner. Align the second framing bar and secure the ends in the same position. Then slide the final frame between the two smaller lengths and secure at each end with screws. Arrange the frame within the shed, ensuring that it is central and squarely aligned over each side. The frame tab should overlap the base framing of the shed. Use a small metal drill bit to create pilot holes through the screw holes and into the base frame. You can now lay a floor over the top of your foundation kit. Here, we're using 9mm OSB sheetboard. This will need to be secured as shown into the metal shed foundation, making sure the edges are flush. Screws for this are not supplied and requirements will vary depending on your flooring material of choice. Your foundation kit is now complete, and so is your shed. Thank you for watching this video guide. For any further advice regarding your shed, please visit